of money in gas fees or whatnot. Outside of that, I think that we need to take our time and really look into building a treasury management committee and or working group, and just say we're going to set this money aside and build up the rules and boundaries and infrastructure for making those decisions about treasury management, and make sure that we have the right people and we train ourselves enough to make responsible decisions. I don't think it's a rush, but I do think we should have conversations around that subject.
You want to pass it?
Yeah, I'll pass it to Zepti.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah, I actually want to discuss the same with Nate. I actually have a different point of view. I don't think we should have a group of people with funds on, treasury management on a split DAO, something like that. Yeah, I think we can have a good discussion. I'll pass it to Levi.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the reward systems, just because, yeah, I think it's the more we talk about, the more simple it gets. That's the hope. And I'll pass to HC.
Hi. Are you talking about SourceGrid, Libby? Yet?
No, we're just talking about the proposals that are in the forum, but if you're familiar with SourceCred, you can help me up when I start to talk about the reward systems.
Then
cool.
That's the thing.
So I'll pass to David.
Hi, hello everybody. I've been enjoying the forum posts on these 4 issues and seeing both sides of the debate. So I thought I'd just hang around for the call and hear a little more debate and get educated. My thoughts are we should buy into the initial curve with a small amount. I don't know how much. Those numbers are so abstract on one level when you're not an accountant or a programmer. I think I wrote $100,000 in the forum, but that number was basically picked out of a hat after a rabbit. So I like the idea, and we can turn to the experts and SMEs for determining just how much. And yeah, I voted on the first one. I'll vote on the rest of the 3. I don't think they're up for vote yet, are they? Only the very first one we voted on. So with that, I will pass it on to Gene. How about? Good to see you here, Gene.
You as well, sir. Thanks. Yeah, I'm similar position to David. I just would like to hear everybody else's opinion on the proposals. I haven't reviewed all of them personally. I had thought to make some comment on the buy-in process, just out of concern for not regulatory standpoint, but just maybe like perception of the DAO participating in their own own ecosystem as like a secondary or tertiary entity. But that was largely resolved after a little bit of further communication. So I'm really just trying to observe and hear everybody else's opinion.
Nice. Okay, well, there was a lot of people talking about buying into the bonding curve, so that's definitely a hot topic. I want to save that till the end, but try to budget about half the time we have left for it, because 4 people mentioned it. And we'll try to go really fast through Gov Giveback, and then reward system can have the in-between time. So I'll try to take it for just say 7 minutes on the Gov Giveback, and then 15 minutes on reward system, and 30 minutes on buying into the bonding curve. Okay, so let's start. Let me just start with Gov Giveback and share my screen. And Zep, are you recording?
Yeah.
Sweet. It's kind of a bonus sesh. Oh, no, not that one. Okay, so the governance giveback is pretty basic. It was part of the no abnormal intervention proposal. And the idea is that we can actually tease out the governance tokens away from the money tokens. During the original proposal, during the whole, like the whole cultural build, people were being rewarded impact hours. But if you were being paid to work, then you received less impact hours than other people, and actually a lot less. If you're paid full time, you received often an 85% deduction in your impact hours. So if you're a volunteer, you got full impact hours. If you were paid, you got 15% impact hours. Now this was changed a little bit through the praise, in the praise wars, as some people call them, where actually the deduction ended up being less, and we had a whole, upheaval of how praise was originally intended, and we modified it, and so, but still there were deductions, and there's a spreadsheet here that goes through the math to calculate all of the deductions. The spreadsheet. But in the end, this is the proposal is to give 70 to allow people to still have the deduction in the monetary value, right? They don't get paid, but it's in the DAO's best interest, or the proposal is claims, and I claim in the proposal, that it's in the DAO's best interest to actually give governance rights to these people, because they're very aware. They put in the time. And we shouldn't actually punish them on the governance side of things. We should, or punish or even out the governance side of things, because they've earned the governance rights. It's just they were already paid. So, the deduction makes sense because volunteers were not paid at all, and we succeeded. So, and people made that decision. But because now if we can tease out the governance rights, then we can reward people with just governance. And that seems like it would be in the best interest of the DAO. So here's a list of the people who would get TEC tokens and how many they would get. The TEC tokens would either be non-transferable or they would be put in a vesting contract depending on the technical solution. And we're going to have a yes-no vote on it. It looks like on the September 17th. There's a discussion of having quadratic voting on Snapshot, which would be fun and interesting. So that's cool. And this is Wonka is leading the proposal. And I want to avoid the discussion on the technical solution, because we really need to leave that to the common swarm to figure out the best technical solution. But I'd love to hear a round of people's opinions on this topic, and we'll try to keep it really short. So I think we should vote yes on it, and it's a good idea. I'll pass it to Livia.
I have mixed feelings about it, because I do think that it's super interesting to look into separating governance from compensation of the tokens. But then it feels like that is something that might need like years of research or something. It feels I feel a little bit like, I don't know, what if it goes super wrong? Like maybe if the solution, I don't know. Maybe I think of cultural problems that could happen. Like, what if like a person has forever governance power and then that person becomes inactive? Or if if they cross the boundaries of the code of conduct, or if there is some type of conflict, or if that person changes behavior along the time, and then I don't know, it feels like just a little group of people would have certain privileges based on a lack of privilege that they didn't have in the past, and that could reflect into something else in the future. That might be something that we'll have to continue be dealing with. So yeah, so I'm really not sure. I think I would like to, maybe I'll come to a Commons Forum call and I would like to talk more with people that understand like the technicalities of it and the implications that could happen. And I'll pass to Zaptimus.
Thanks, Libby. Yeah, I also think I, at this moment at least, I think I would vote no. But the reason is like I have like at least two. One is like some people rage quit and would have a huge amount of tokens that I don't know. It would feel weird like people who rage quit and then having tokens uh, because of the price debate. And then I also feel, like I choose not to get paid, and I feel, oh man, I fucked up. Like I feel I would get more governance just getting paid, right? So, but yeah, that's a personal thing. Uh, but yeah, overall, and also like I think like what Livy was mentioned, like having, you know, governance load. I don't think that's right. Like I feel like people should be free to come and go. So yeah, I don't like people being locked on something. I mean, if people do not want to participate, they will just not vote. But how that would affect, or maybe they would vote whatever. Like they could even troll. I don't think people in this space, in this concrete would troll. But like it's a weird mechanic. I don't know. Yeah, that's my feeling. I'll pass it to David.
I believe a great amount of research has been done already by a group called Sunder Finance into separation of governance rights from currency ability. And I'm just working on providing a link into our community hall now to see if that can help provide some context and information to help guide our decision-making process. Yeah, I came across it as one of the Gitcoin grants, and it's a sort of a mid-sized project with a lot of financing behind it. It's not fluff, is what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, let me get that link up, and maybe we can, maybe we'll find some great educational resources there. And with that, I don't think I've ever been in this group before. We'll pass it on to Santi. Have you gone? Or I guess, do you want to go? Go.
Santi's not here. Maybe Nate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my view on this is that I have no problem with giving the people who earned governance rights or had them taken away to reward them with governance rights. I have no issue with that. But my view has always been, instead of having these individuals holding it, I would prefer to see kind of a broader strategy. And I would really love to see a pool of governance tokens that is managed by a committee of token engineers, and the community votes those token engineers in, and that adds process and abstracts things. But I like the idea of it, because I do think when it comes to grant making, I think having very talented token engineers who understand the space and who understand what token engineers need and what type of infrastructure that needs to be built, it helps inform community decisions and community voting. So the mechanic is something that I think is the most valuable thing that we can produce out of this. And if it works that way, I'm all for it. However, for me individually, I don't really care about getting those governance tokens. That's just my personal opinion. And if anybody else, individuals who really care about it, like, I want to give them that. So for me, I'm all for it, as long as the technical solution is feasible and is low risk. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. But I would really like to see it utilized in a more strategic way for governance, for long-term governance. I'll pass it back to you, Griff.
Sure. I'll throw it to Gene. And Gene and HC, I know that you're somewhat removed, but if you have any thoughts on the topic, of course, bring it in.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what Nate just said right now. I'm pretty well split down the middle. I understand Chris's position in terms of the people that have done the work previously have a certain writer expectation, had a certain writer expectation to those governance tokens. So that would be perfectly justified. But I share Livy's concern in terms of the possibilities for having governance not be an effective mechanism anymore over the course of the future for the various reasons that she stated, whether people leave or lose interest or the votes start to get delegated to a more concentrated group. But Nate's comment about creating some sort of committee that's somewhat abstracted or removed from the individual aspect of governance seems really sensible and would help with Livy's concern with people leaving or wanting to move away from involvement and immediate knowledge of the process. So that seems to make a lot of sense and would allow people that do have an immediate interest in terms of just wanting to shepherd the process along, not so much a personal vested interest, but a communal interest that would go a long way towards that. But I do think that the governance aspect of it potentially is worth the quote unquote value in this is that the governance aspect is more valuable than the fiscal aspect of it, and that should be respected. And the quadratic idea is potentially very valuable in that respect to ideally distribute that to as many entities as possible and keep it from possibly being perceived as concentrated in too few hands. So.
Great. Thank you guys for these comments. David, did you find that link? I was looking in the channels. I don't know where you put it. DM it.
Yes, it will be there momentarily. Thanks.
Oh, perfect. DM it to me too, and I'll just throw it in this little box. HZ waved me off, so we can move on to the reward system.
Okay. So the idea of this proposal is basically to put together, I'll try to explain from the map, actually. It's basically to bring together Praise, SourceCred, and Alexandra. So to do that, there are some challenges. And the reason we want to do that is because after the Praise debate, intervention, and all that, there was some improvements that we saw that could happen with the Praise system. And the biggest one being like, oh, it's very time consuming. What will happen when we scale? How can we make it a more fractal process and use other tools to fill some gaps? And then we can have each one of them with a single function and all of them operating together. So the function of Praise is to be to gather qualitative data, and that's very hard to achieve with reward system tools. So Praise is really like amazing for that. Just by everyone here must be familiar Praise, just what we did in the call now. There is so much subjective richness that happens when people can formulate their own what they want to reward, what they are grateful for, and how that becomes impact hour, how that is quantified by humans and not by machines, into like what subjective value that has. And then SourceCred that has a more objective input and looks into platforms. So right now we only have working on GitHub and Discord, but we could also put Discord in there if we want for some things. So yeah, a lot of contributions that are just happening. And like an issue that someone closed on GitHub, or a post that they did in the forum, things like that. They don't need to be praised. They can just be rewarded by SourceCred. And then Alexandra is just a tool that captures times and calls. So a lot of our praise is for people attending meetings, so we wouldn't have to do that anymore. And then the quantification list would be smaller. So the idea is that the praise will, we need a bot that will get all the addresses, and this is the most challenging part now on how to get addresses for all of these 3 platforms simultaneously. And then this will go to a data sheet that will be randomized and sent to quantifiers. And then we'll have multiple quantifiers that will receive different data sheets, and some of them that will receive the same ones. And we'll quantify that into impact hours, just like we did before. And then the SourceCred data will come to the reward systems DAO, and the Alexandra data will also come to the reward systems DAO, together with the praise data. I hope this is not too confusing right now, but yeah, when they're there, they will be voted on for the distribution. So this DAO can distribute all of these rewards to everyone, to all of the addresses that received rewards from the 3 systems. And then that's basically it. And this funds will come from the TEC DAO. So a proposal will be submitted, and every once in a while, the reward systems DAO will have funds to distribute every 2 weeks for the rewards that are that were collected. So the idea is that we implement all of that, and it's a complex little system, but I'm positive that we can do it with the people that are helping, and that are some challenges. But I think this will be really cool for everyone moving forward. So I'll pass to Griff to start with some thoughts.
Sorry, I'm eating. I think it's super cool. I'm excited to see the little Twitter line also get like teased out, because that's another quantitative thing that we were giving praise for before, and definitely something I hope that we continue to reward because of how critical Twitter is for our community. But yeah, I think it sounds really complicated when we try to walk through all the mechanics, but in the end it's like, okay, we have praise, we have people in calls that will measure, we have SourceCred measuring GitHub action and things like that, and all the quantitative, and then we have Twitter, and all that quantitative data will get recorded, and then praise will be the qualitative data. And then we just have to figure out how the DAO, this group of people, this maybe rotating group of people, will just have the decision-making power to decide how all of that gets rewarded. And I think that's gonna be the weird part, right? It's like I don't think anyone's gonna be mad at, like, okay, these are the inputs, but then processing those inputs will be really interesting. And like, how does that happen? And I personally, I actually think it's super cool to just like trust the people that are there and have some sort of accountability. I don't know if we need like to vote people in or out or something like that, or like just using the snapshot, or if we have like roaming elections every so often, or if we Yeah, because in the end, I think it's really important that they have the subjective ability to like adjust and tweak things so that the signals are processed well. Because that's not something that we just get right. That's something that has to be tweaked every month, and we're going to have to trust them to tweak it, in my opinion. But I think it'll be super cool, and I'm really excited to see the process built out around the praise being quantified by like 12 people or whatever, and paying the quantifiers will also be super cool. And I'll pass it to Nate.
Yeah, thank you, Griff. So this is one that I have probably the least knowledge about. However, I do have a lot of thoughts on. The one thing that is interesting to me is looking at each system independently. Praise I think is one of the greatest positive cultural practice that we have in the TEC, and I think it's really positive, and I think it could stand alone without any type of reward system attached to it. But the idea, and then I look at source cred and I say, okay, well, this is great for quantifying certain behaviors, but like in my opinion, source cred is a great incentive alignment for, it's like a tool that you can use to incentivize certain behaviors at certain times. When you need something done, you can kind of say, I want to reward this type of behavior right now to get that, a desired outcome. However, if we're just using it as a kind of broad, reward system, I think it misses a lot, especially when you have quantitative like things like GitHub and developers working. I do think there's a lot of qualitative aspects within that realm that get missed, and a lot of quantitative things within a qualitative job like comms that get missed with the system. And so there are little gaps there that worry me about this kind of overall approach to a reward system when you have, we're saying that source cred is going to take care of the quantitative data, praise is going to cover all the qualitative, and then we're going to have this holistic reward system. I think it works if we minimize the amount of grain or reward that actually gets distributed. If we have a significant amount of reward, and this is the main way we're rewarding contributors, I think it becomes a little problematic and could probably cause a lot of conflict that's not necessary in the future. It's tough for me because it's just like I do see how it could work if I think source cred still needs a lot of I think it's in early stages. I do think it has a lot of potential. I can't see it right now. But outside of that, and then you have the time tool, which is really cool too. But I like, instead of looking at this as like an entire system, I look at them as individual components, and from my perspective, these components aren't fully developed yet, and so that's the only thing I get concerned about. I think a different model would probably be beneficial, but if this is what we have, this is what we have, and I'm all for iterating on it. So those are my thoughts about it, and I will pass it to Zepti.
Thanks, Nate. I mean, yeah, I think like, for example, I could be criticizing like, oh, maybe having the bot having people connected, it would lead to people using multiple accounts. I have one in my background with I change my voice on the microphone or whatever. Weird mechanics. But at the same time, I think we need to just set up and go. And for me, like the most important thing, more important than even the things we do, like the most important thing for me is we have mutual monitoring and transparency around everything. And yeah, if we have that, it's like if you're showing like every detail of everything you're doing, then it's very like and the whole community is looking at that. It's going to be impossible to gamify, and I think the strength should be on that. And I'll pass it to AC.
Well, I'm not gonna get into the philosophy as much as like the technicalities. So one thing that I've noticed is Twitter question mark. That technically can be under source credit. I could do a demo of something small, but I could just send them for that. if you don't have the time for the demo. So there's like a meeting chat somewhere. I don't know. No, I can't find it. I'll just send it in.
There's a
What?
source cred chat. There's a source cred chat that you can send in there. That would be so great.
Okay, so I just sent it.
Thank you.
In. No worries. But this basically is this new feature of source code just released I think last week. Could read data from an API, could be the Twitter API, and assign like someone did something, and that rewards them. That it helps you write how the graph interacts, or how you can draw the graph yourself. And the demo itself is pretty comprehensive of how you can work with that under source code. So that's something that I think if you have like some development time, you can check it out. It's called the external plugin. Just an API, and then you basically model the data into the graph, user graph, and then it would be just a cred under source code. That's all I wanted to contribute for now. They can also be anything, different sources. But last thing that I wanted to contribute is like have everything under source code is my recommendation. Having different systems, even praise, source code props in their own server, which has been nice. Just creating from Discord, but having everything under the same umbrella would be extremely nice. Is what I then pass it to someone who can pass things to somebody else.
Thank you. I'll pass to Jean. I think you're the last one.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I was in agreement with first. I think it's cool personally. It's necessary, the system, and I went through obviously the praise Mageddon or praise wars or however it's referenced, and felt for Jeff in the process and understood Griff's position in the process. I read Kelsey David's paper from a few weeks ago about the DAOs as panopticons and the potential for the system that functioning in a way that it wasn't intended to. I agree with Nate on the concerns about the qualitative versus quantitative aspects of these systems, but Griff's point about it being necessary to tweak and iterate over time is correct. It needs to be implemented soon in order to give the whole idea of participation credibility, but it's going to be a work in process, obviously. And Zepti makes a good point about the civil vulnerability, but that's something that's probably not necessarily on people's radar in terms of trying to abuse the system specifically, but it's an excellent point to keep in mind going forward as the value in participation grows over time. So yeah, certainly something to address at some point, but yeah, it should be started and implemented so that people can get rewarded with whatever systems and iterate over time.
Hey, Livy, can I ask a question real quick? Do you see these reward systems that are designed with source credit and praise being kind of championed by the working group DAOs if they become DAOs to utilize source credit in that manner, or do you think they'll develop their own systems? Like, is that something we want to happen?
I think everybody could use. I mean, if it's working and people are like the squad DAOs won't be like an external part of the TC. They will still be in the TC dynamics, and I think they can only benefit from having all of the processes that are already built out instead of having to like invent the circle again. But of course, like anything can be forked at any time. And I think a point that I just forgot mentioning is that one part of the system we're proposing is having constant data analysis every 2 weeks, and that would be followed by, so all of the quantifiers will be doing that async, but then they will meet in one meeting that instead of like the 3-hour meetings we had, it would be like 1-hour meeting or 45 minutes meeting, that they would talk about the cultural insights they had from looking at the data. And then the analysis will also have some of these insights being processed, and this will offer like some feedback loop for the community and the culture moving on. So that point that you mentioned, Griff, that will be present for sure.
Cool. Well, let's pass the party over to Nate. Nate, do you want to take on the bonding curve?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So I guess the first thing I think everybody here is aware of the bonding curve issue. Yeah. So my thoughts on it are, the first steps would probably be say, I don't know, Livy. We kind of went back and forth on whether there should be a yes or no vote on whether to do this or not. Even though there is rough consensus, but even if I do think everybody would vote yes. The question just becomes how much. And after defining that, then I really think that once we have the initial buy into the bonding curve, we should have a separate DAO and or a multi-sig wallet that is maybe held by the community stewards to actually hold it until we figure out a way to develop a working group around treasury management. I always suspect like most of it, what we do with it after that is really up to the community, but we really need to have the champions who are going in, like Mitch, talking with Agave and talking about the venture capital partners that are potentially there with Angela, as well as liquidity mining. We need to have really good consensus on what to do with those funds. I think it's a no-brainer to actually perform this action, but I do think we need to take it slow and make sure that we are very diligent with how we manage this money, and that goes as well as for the money in the common pool. But this particular buy in particular, I think is extremely beneficial. I think we'll grow the common pool significantly because of it. But I do think we should take our time in I don't think there's any rush. That's my only point. I just don't want to make this initial buy into the bonding curve, make these hasty decisions, and then all of a sudden we've lost a significant portion of our common pool funds because we didn't want to take our time to actually set up the infrastructure to manage it properly. So that's really my only concern is that getting the right people, getting the right advice, making sure we make the right decisions, and making sure the entire process is transparent is really important for this particular proposal. And so I think there are probably two things that need to happen, and that's the snapshot vote of yes or no, just because I do think it should be an official decision made by the community, rather than just kind of it's a rough consensus, let's do it, and then we have to decide like how much, what is the max first, and then decide how much we want from there and justify it. So those are my only thoughts.
You don't want to pass it to someone?
I'll pass it to you, Griff. Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. I wanted to take it, so it was great. Yeah, actually, you made me think of some things. Like, I really like this idea of starting with yes or no. Like, is anyone against this? I don't think that I think Gene said some interesting concepts. I'd love to hear him go more into his thoughts on where there could be issues, especially like from like a legal side or something like that. But But I really like this. Okay, so if it's yes, then how much? And there might also be like consideration of not only how much dollars, but also how much extra price do we add to the bonding curve, right? Like what percentage does the price go up? Like maybe it's like, oh yeah, up to a 25% increase in the bonding curve price or 200K, whichever is hit first, you know? So if we put 200K in and it only brings the price up 20%, great, we take 200K worth of TEC. If we would have put 200K in and it would have moved the price 30%, then maybe that's too much. And like, I don't know, maybe that's a consideration. And the thing is, we won't know what the bonding curve looks like until after we say, we should really pick a number, you know, and give some deterministic things so that when we're designing it, we can remove that amount from the dashboard and do a better design. Yeah. But I really like the idea of holding some of our own token. Like most DAOs have control of their own token. We could, yeah, and it's weird not to, as a DAO, not to have some in your coffers already. You know, I imagine that in future commons, this will be built in to some extent in advance, where it's just like, oh yeah, and you get the first buy in the bonding curve, here's your 50K or whatever, or percentage. And it might be a variable that we vote on in the economic design. But with that, I'll pass it to Livia.
Sorry, I wanted to ask real quick, is there any risk of front running?
No.
Okay.
That's actually what we're doing. We're front running the front runners.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, for me, the only thing that is, I think it's a great idea too. I think the only thing is confusing is how many options we have to use those funds, to how to use the funds. I think it seems to me that it's almost a consensus that we should do that because the forum had a lot of engagement. Like I think 36 likes and only positive comments or questions, like nothing blocking the idea or something. And then Mitch was saying that since we need like the reserve balance param to know how much we should buy in, that maybe we could do that in that week, like that we will have a week in between that we'll have the result of the params and it will be before the commons upgrade. And then we have everything else decided, but that amount that we could say something that is a hypothesis, but then to ratify that number once we have like a fixed number for everything. But I like what you said also, Griff, to just go with something that makes sense in any scenario. And then yeah, I think my only question is, so we're thinking about holding some TEC tokens and then using some for the rewards DAO and then using some for like partnerships or investors. And can we do the three of them, or we need to pick one? Or how would we decide how much will go for what? I think that would be that's unclear for me.
I think specifically for rewards, I think you should really just make a budget, like how much you want to dish out for the next, and in US dollar amounts or something for different periods, and make sort of a budget. And then that will be really nice to know, because I think it's a no-brainer for me at least to fund the reward system. There's no debate unless the reward system somehow isn't going to happen. But like, we need TEC for the reward system. Let's buy the cheapest TEC possible, So, yeah.
Pass to Zap.
Yeah, thanks, Livy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree on doing the initial buy. I mean, yeah, but there is a lot of good proposals. yeah, I also think like the reward system should be one of our priorities. But then at the same time, I feel we cannot do too much because, for example, if you I was suggesting putting like 200k on agave, for example, like, and the Mitch was saying, but that's 25% of our common pool if no one rates with, and that makes me think. If you're putting liquidity as a DAO, you are not going to put like 5k, 10k. Maybe yes, I don't know, but it feels if you want to make liquidity, you want like people who have money to be able to operate, and I feel like low money is not going to accomplish any purpose. Maybe helps, but like people will also put liquidity by themselves if the token ends up being transferable. And the thing is, like, I think we should have clear goals and focus on what we want to do. And I really like the proposal of funding the reward system and having the that one that Sam proposed, the agave, having some, as Sam was saying, like we could go with some percentages. We don't need to put 100% of our treasury on agave dye or whatever the token name, and it would give us an interest. And if we see, like, and if we can put, I don't know, 10%, 20%, and then if in passing time, like in 2 years we say, oh, this is pretty stable, this is going good, maybe let's put another 10%, or the other way, oh, this is not going way as we expected, so let's remove it. And so I think I think that this proposal in particular could complement with others because it's not affecting our common pool because we are actually holding another token. And I'll pass it to Ginny.
Thanks, Seb. I my only, I understand that nobody really, criticized the process, and from a like purely, capital acquisition or accumulation perspective, obviously it's a good idea because it's going to make a profit straight from the start. But that idea of, being the front runner on the front runners is hypothetically what my concern is from an ethics or perception standpoint, just because just purely based on the branding of token engineering and the idea of commons, by having a somewhat separate entity, or creating a purchase based on our own and acting as this kind of separate market agent, without full understanding of what's trying to be accomplished. I mean, I agree with Griff that it's a no-brainer in terms of this will likely, if it's not questioned ethically, will be something that's incorporated from the start, because it makes sense to hold your own tokens and be a kind of market maker to a degree. But it could be perceived as being a manipulator of the market for your own your own token, and so that would be my only concern, is that people would view this, because this could be historical. So from a purely looking back on it perspective, from the future, and if people saw that this was something that happened, and without considering that it becomes a normalized thing, it could shade the idea or the name of token engineering, and make it to where you're not really engineering tokens, you're engineering profit accumulation, so to speak. But hopefully, obviously, the idea is that this provides capital for this project and future projects going forward, and that it's not an ethical concern. It's just a purely makes sense. So anyway, sorry for gibbering on.
No, it's great. I like the ethical concerns and the ethical perspectives. I think because it's a part of the initialization, it should be okay, but I'm not. Honestly, I'm glad to hear constructive like criticism and feedback and questioning, to like be like, is it? I'd be curious to hear what Shebnem thinks or the Omega group, and see if they think that this initial buy has some ethical issues around it. Might be cool to hear. I guess since I have the floor, I really think that it would be easier to design with the number known in advance or with some constraints known in advance, and then we can design all of the parameters as opposed to having one parameter at the end that we tweak. I feel like that's a little bit more like, oh yeah, here's my design. Oh, you just totally fucked it with this one decision, I feel like it's more like, okay, here's all of the assumptions. Okay, now here's 12 buttons to push is a way better way to go than, okay, here's 12 buttons to push and we're going to totally change it with one design choice. So I don't know. I actually haven't gotten to read the forum post or Mitch's point there. So, well, I always love disagreeing with that kid.
So I wanted to say to Livy, I see what you're saying about the rough consensus part and the forum and being rough consensus. The only reason I would I'm harping on this one thing about the yes or no vote is it eliminates a lot of potential conflict where it's like, hey, we decided to take a significant amount of money, let's say $200,000, it's a lot. And, somebody in hindsight goes, hey, I disagree with that. Why did we do that? It kind of eliminates that possibility just because hey, we had a vote. It voted yes, we followed the rules. And you don't have to worry about those types of scenarios occurring. And so that's my only kind of, forceful be like, hey, let's try to do this yes or no vote on Snapshot at least.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't against a yes or no vote. I wasn't against a vote on that. I was just suggesting that we use one of the alternatives being the no, the block. And then we have the other alternatives together with the proposal, just so when people are voting, they're not voting blindly on a yes or no. They are voting like, oh, we could go with this, or we could go with this, or we could go with this, or we could block it. And then the challenging thing would just be like, what is the percentage of blocking votes that would be needed to actually block that proposal?
I think that's a really good idea. And I was also going to ask Griff, do you think that if we did decide an amount or a percentage beforehand that you could incorporate it within the configuration dashboard? I know that you guys are already busy and have your hands full, and that might throw a kink in it, but I don't know.
I don't think it would be hard to do on top of the config dashboard. I know what we have. One thing that we have already is this. We have this slider basically that's like hatcher rage quit %. So like it's an assumption and it's in advanced parameters. So we can, if we know that it's 200K, we can just make that default so that 200K is taken out plus the amount that we're assuming will rage quit. So we can like take that out. So if it was 200K, then it'd be like, oh, well, guess what? We only have $1.3 million to fund in the conviction voting pool and da-da-da. And then we could also make the default first buy be, we could add that to the augmented bonding curve where the default first buy is just, the 200K. And we could probably even add in that percentage unless it changes the price by this %. We could add that in too. So yes, sorry, I had to talk it through, but yes, long story short, yes, I think we could add it into the dashboard, but not in a super, we would just take what we have and make it work.
Yeah. What does that do for like I know it's going to be a kind of a complicated timeline in terms of making decisions and when. I don't know if, like, Livy, do you have something already set out for that, like in terms of what votes need to happen when?
I think we could do this signal on Snapshot, probably with a token weighted voting and not with quadratic voting, because I think in this case in specific it matters how much tokens people have to make that decision. So we could actually use that what is it called, agent approval voting, where if you vote for multiple choices, your full amount goes to all of those multiple choices. So it's not ranked choice voting. You either choose one or you choose three, and then you get that full amount, and you will, anyways, you would see in the end like the actual signal of everyone. And we could run with all of the options that we have and just an approximate amount. And that would make us know which proposals people are a bigger fan of and if that would be blocked or not. So that is already like a powerful signaling that could happen like soon. We just need to draft a little bit better the proposals, I think, or at least for me, the agave thing is very confusing still.
Yeah, the agave thing has almost nothing to do with the initial blended bonding curve, just in the fact that we might do a token swap with them. But the agave piece is like totally separate. Like whether or not we use Rapdex diet, that should be a separate discussion in a different forum post, I think.
And where would we hold this money?
What?
Where would we hold the money?
That's a great question. A DAO, a sub DAO that would manage it. I personally, this is something, we don't have any time left. And I really should go to sleep because I have a flight in 6 hours. So I have to leave for a flight in 6 hours. But I really wanted to hear Zeptimus's thoughts on why we shouldn't have money held in a sub DAO.
I mean, the thing is, like, when this if this sub DAO is governed by the whole DAO, then it's a different story, right? But if this sub DAO is governed, I don't know, by you, but the 5 guys who are in here, it creates, now we have this money and now we decide what we do with that money. And I think that's a dangerous position to be, like, for the community.
What if our source code DAO held it?
Yeah, it's the same. I think pollen distribution, but it's the same. It's the same. The thing is, in my opinion, like the DAO should reward this, decide how much money goes, and actually it's what is going to happen, The reward DAO is just going to approve what the DAO says, and I think, or that's what at least I'm thinking, the DAO is going to say, okay, this month we are going, or for these 2 last month we advanced that amount, so we are going to put this amount of money, that's the value we generated, so this amount of money we generated and it's approved on the main DAO is going to be distributed. And I think the whole DAO should get decide on almost everything, otherwise you create weird situations where some people have more power than others, and even even if someone have, imagine like someone who is a whale and on this DAO, but then we are putting a lot of money on a separate DAO that is much more than what he's holding, and these people now can, even if he has more skin in the game, these other people can control more than him, which is weird because it's politics.
What if it was like we had these budgets, like, okay, it's like 50K to the reward DAO, 50K to investment, like people 50K for token swaps and 50K for, I can't even remember what the other one is. And then they went to these 4 like working groups, we'll say like temporary working groups until the money is distributed. Would that make sense?
Yeah, if it's like this amount of money, yes. But if it's, like when you're talking on big percentages, I think, if you're talking like the budget for a month or 2, yeah, that's okay. But, when we're talking about the experts having governance power or treasury management holding like the whole treasury or whatever decision we end up taking, I think, yeah, it could be dangerous. I'm not saying it's going to be dangerous, but it could be. And actually, like, it's, and we're trying to build decentralized communities. If we want to be centralized, why, we just build a company.
Nate, did you have something there?
No, I think, you raise a good point, especially in terms of governance, but I think that most of the time, we already have a vested interest, most of us, and, regardless if it's a DAO, like a membership DAO, like the Source Cred one, or if it's a multi-sig, there's accountability that is, endowed to those individuals. And so if you make a multi-sig with a threshold of 4 out of 5 people, I mean, all you need is, 2 people to say no to nefarious action. And so I think if you get a higher number and a higher threshold, I think that's enough security in terms of managing a treasury. But that's really up for the community to decide. And I understand that you want the whole community to decide every action with that treasury, but I kind of agree with Griff in a lot of ways where, if those things on the periphery should stay on the periphery and build trust within the working groups and different, aspects of the DAO.
Okay, well, we're over time by 5 minutes. Thank you. I'm glad. Thanks for taking the last word, Nate. And there's a lot to still discuss. So thank you guys for being so active on the forum. And yeah, see you guys next round.